it's that time of the week when we set aside some time to talk about autism in the classroom. Now, for those of you who are parents and not teaching in the classroom, I think that it's still really beneficial for you because as each year is or each, as your child gets older, when they get to high school and they're having a different teacher each period, you want to have, I certainly have had the experience where people have said when they know that my child's coming in the classroom, well, what can I do? Well, how can I, what are some strategies that that will help? So it's good for you to know your own child, but also to, have some things in your back pocket to know, okay, these are good teaching strategies that are kind of across the board. But we really want to be reaching out to more and more teachers because I know that if we can get teachers on board, we can bump up the level of what's happening and keep good teachers in good jobs because they're not getting stressed out and burnt out and having to go down the corners. So, new segment, Autism in the Classroom. And this week, our tip is about classroom rules. So here's the thing with classroom rules. I know people, you say the word rules and people have a reaction like, oh, I don't like rules, except that we all do. We really do because we have our own rules. Maybe, another person has other rules, but we all like to adhere to certain rules. And as somebody who comes from a background of theater, I always used to teach my students and say, let's learn the rules first. And then you can break them if you understand the rules, right? Same thing with writing. So it kind of gives some permission, color within the lines. It helps to confine something just long enough to learn it, and then you can break out of the mold. Okay. I think it's super duper important in any situation, especially with folks who potentially are behind or have difficulty receiving information, to define for them what the rules of any given situation are. I don't know about you, but I hate it when I go to a new restaurant that's newfangled and it's like a fast food restaurant and you go, oh, I don't even know, where do I order? I'm looking for the sign that says place order here, pay for it here. I like to have a roadmap. I think that most people do. And imagine if you're a kiddo and being sent off to school, what that's like. It's kind of like the worst cocktail party in your imagination, right? Where you get there and you don't know if you've got the right thing on and you don't know what to do. You have all these questions and there's nothing that indicates to you what's happening, right? And in those circumstances, you love it when somebody gives you clues as to what's happening. Let's face it, we all want to be successful. Even little kids want to feel like what they've done is a good job. But if we don't tell them what a good job is, how are they going to know whether they did it? So I think regardless of what age a student is, there should always be classroom rules and they should always be visible. Let's remember that all of our learners are not the same, right? Some of our learners learn through something being spoken to them. Some of them learn through textual information. Some of them like a visual. So we want to cover all of our bases because some of our learners, a lot of our learners, are visual. But that we can't have it just be posted, but we at the minimum should have it be posted. And I think on a regular basis, the rules have to be discussed. So I went this morning very quickly, went online and just Googled classroom rules and put in images. And I pulled 3 off to give 3 great examples for 3 different periods of time in a student's life to give you an idea of what a classroom rule can be. Now, I come from the old school idea of that anything more than 5, something's going to get lost. Right? I adhere to the rule of 5 with everything. When my son was little and we would go on a play date, I would say, it could be 5 or less, right? But no more than 5. If you got more than 5 things, people can't remember it, okay? But so let's take a look at Samantha, let's show us the first one. So this is a great example of a list of rules to be posted in a preschool, in a kindergarten, in a first grade, right? Because I don't necessarily have to completely be able to read because if the teacher stands there and goes through, I should go this way, I got my Carol Merrill skills. So the teacher can say, okay, everybody, you know, they come in for class, and at some point, let's remember our class rules that we have looking eyes. Now, is that going to be hard for a kiddo who's on the autism spectrum? Yes. But does that mean that we don't work on it? No. That we've got listening ears, that we've got a quiet mouth, that we've got helping hands, and we've got walking feet. Now, notice that it doesn't say, on this one, it doesn't say no running, right? If we can, with our rules, be on the positive side of things, it's much harder to not do something than it is to do something else. And so I love this particular one and this particular, we're not saying no running. Nobody's going to pay attention to that. And it's really hard to not run, but it's very easy to have walking feet. You see what I'm saying? And for our kids that have trouble with receptive language, having the pictures with them, super duper going to help them. We're going to help to teach kids to be able to read by going over this over and over and over again. Looking eyes, listening ears, quiet mouth, helping hands, walking feet. Does it need to be these 5 things? No. It doesn't. But these are 5 great things because they're going to cover a wide variety of things. But 1,018,000 different ways to do. But this would be a great poster, like I said, kindergarten, great poster to have and to go through. Let's take a look. I wanted you to see that these things can grow with a class. So here we've got class rules, and this is more appropriate for like 2nd grade through 6th grade because we're getting into talking about respect kinds of things. Let's listen when other people are talking. Let's follow direction. Let's keep hands, feet, and objects to ourselves. Let's work quietly and do not disturb others. Let's show respect for school and personal property, and let's work and play in a safe manner. When we've got kids that are bouncing off, and does it have to be these? And this is 6. So I would bump one of these off, right? I would. But, maybe these kids can handle 6. But so, this goes through. But see, what happens is if you have these rules up and you go over them on a regular basis, something is happening in the classroom. And rather than stopping your groove in what you're teaching, you make eye contact with one of the students in the class and you point to one of them to say, hey, remember, we've gone over this. And that you're expected to follow these rules, and that's all that you need to do. You don't have to get all verbal on them. You just point to it. They see what's happening. I think that whenever I go into a classroom now, one of the first things, and if I go in as a guest, one of the first things that I do is say, okay, so here's what our rules are. And rule number 1 for me is that we are going to have respect for ourselves and for everyone else. And I usually, depending if I'm only going to be there for a day, I start and stop with that because there's a lot there that, if I call on somebody, they raise their hand and I call on them and they're talking and somebody else pipes up, I'll stop everything and say, let's remember, and usually I'll write it on the whiteboard, respect for ourselves and everybody else. And then it's a teaching moment. Let's remember that one of the things that we do to respect each other is that we don't talk while other people are talking. That's just a respect thing. And then they go, oh, okay, I didn't know, and they do. They knew that from before, but we're because how many times does it take to teach someone something, right? And I think that respect, and there are several on here that go under the heading of respect. So listening when other people are talking, having respect for school property and other people's property, that comes under respect. And I think even working, playing in a safe manner is showing respect for yourself. So I've kind of grouped those together under respect, right? But here's the thing about it. Every classroom teacher's set of rules different. But for me, respect is number 1, because if we can teach a student to be respectful of themselves and others, they're going to do great things. And everything else tends to fall into place. But there's a certain age range in which keeping our hands and feet and objects to ourselves, super duper important, worthwhile to mention to them. And following directions, this is the key, to this age range. But then let's go ahead and show what's more appropriate for like a junior high or a high school. And notice the graphic is different and they've got a high 5. Now it's all about I will be positive. I will be engaged. I will show respect. I will participate. And number 5, my actions are, and if it's my actions, then it's my consequences, right? We're still keeping the language really small because we don't want to belabor this, right? If there's a teaching moment where we need to go back over something, then we can talk about and start a classroom discussion about what does it mean to be positive? What does it mean to be engaged? What does it mean to show respect? Is what we just did respectful of ourselves and our other students and school property and my property and so on and so forth? And we can, but having that visual up there. So my sort of homework for all of us is, if you've got a student in school right now, ask yourself, have we talked about what the rules are for school? Does the teacher have something, a visual up somewhere in the classroom that our student can look to see the rules? If the teacher doesn't, this is a great gift to give them. Make them a set of classroom rules that you think would be appropriate. If they decide not to hang it, well, you can walk the horse over to the water trough. You can't make them drink. But I think, if they're not there, have a discussion with the teacher about, hey, can we get some classroom rules up in your classroom? Because I think it would be a good thing for them. If you're a teacher, I think this is your first line of defense. And we talked earlier in the program about what does respect mean, because I knew that we were going to go to this place. And again, I think if you teach that component to students, that they must be respectful of themselves and others and property, their own property and other people's property. It's like you've just taken out like 90% of the challenging behavior that could happen if you really teach that. But the only way that you can really effectively teach respect is if you give it. And when we have that up on the board, it reminds us always, this is what we're doing. To me, there's something deeply respectful about posting the rules of a classroom. It says it makes it a safe space. This is where something big is going to happen in this space, and everyone is going to be safe. And when there are infractions to rules, I think it's super duper important to show respect. That it doesn't immediately become this, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you following rule number 1? And instead making it a teaching moment about, hey, something just happened. Can we have a conversation about this? Because that's not respectful. Now you might be thinking to yourself, with kindergarten kids and with kids who are on the spectrum, really? But how do we teach respect? A little bit at a time. And maybe the first time that we stop things in a kindergarten class and say, you know what, that's not really respectful of Joey. What you just did was not respectful of Joey. The kids in the kindergarten class are not going to understand it. They may not even understand it that entire year, but they start to associate the word with respect with treating people in a certain way. If what we want to do is get there, let's take the time to get there. But we don't just suddenly start to teach respect in 6th grade. That's not going to happen. So much bad is going to happen before that. We had a viewer write in yesterday about how badly he was bullied. I really think if we start really early on teaching respect, and every time we see respect not happening, stopping, calling it and saying, this is not respect. So what can we do? This is not punishment. What can we do now to change this equation to get the respect? And for those of us who are parents at home, we can start to instill this in our kids and call it when we see it. Whether you're watching a television program, you're watching Caillou, and something happens, we have the ability to pause now. Television, I love this. And to say, hey, was that respect? Introduce that word. But see, if we have rules, and if they're clearly posted, whether you're like me and respect is number 1 or other things are number 1, if we clearly know what the expectations are, our chances are better that we're going to be successful. Classroom rules, it's just one of the things that helps all classrooms, but especially when you have individuals on the autism spectrum, having that visual there is going to be so helpful.